today will be a challenge for the fellows to get answers out of Urban Meyer because of the reporting of Brett McMurphy yesterday and what it led to, the firing of Zach Smith as Ohio State's wide receivers coach. Now, Zach is Earl Bruce's grandson. That we've had a relationship here with Earl for many years before he passed away at 6'10" and here. So I just want to disclose that. But if you don't know Brett, you know that ESPN let go a bunch of people a year ago, and they kept a bunch of people that I'm still scratching my head over why in the world, if you're sitting there going, Jay Crawford or this person, Ed Werder or this person, Brett McMurphy or this person. They made the wrong choice in like every single case because Brett McMurphy's really good at what he does, and that was proven yesterday with his reporting on Zach Smith, and we're lucky to have Brett on the show now. Appreciate you taking the time to join us from Chicago, Brett.
Hey, good morning. Just think if they had media guides and there were 14 members in this league.
Oh.
You'd need a wheelbarrow to get out of here.
I'd need a second shoulder replacement. Yeah, I blame their media guides for my one shoulder replacement. All right, so yesterday morning, you reported on some domestic violence matters in Zach Smith's past, 2009 at Florida, 2015 at Ohio State. The question I have is, Brett, do you have any insight on the Florida matter? Let's start with that. Was that public record at the time? Did it get out? We know Urban had a lot of stuff going on legally among players and things like that. Was Zach Smith on the staff at Florida when people in and around that program knew of that incident, that report taking place on what was his one-year anniversary?
Yeah, at that point, Zach had been a quality assistant coach when he first got to Florida, and then he actually was a grad assistant his final 2 years at Florida. So he was actually a grad assistant when the first allegation happened at Florida. It was a public record. However, by all the reporting I did, it never got out. I don't know if it was because Zach was a grad assistant and the beat writers at Florida simply didn't look it up or didn't know to look it up. The charges were dropped eventually by Courtney Smith, and so that was not a public record then. Excuse me, it was a public record, but it didn't get out in the media as far as I could tell. Certainly, since it is a public record in Florida, I know Florida's public record law pretty well. Everything's available. So when I made a request for documents back in 2009, I found that, but apparently that had never been reported before.
Okay, let's move to the 2015 alleged incident, Powell, Ohio, which is a suburb here of Columbus. Zach's fully tenured guy on the staff at the time. He's maybe not tenured, but he's on the staff. He's Urban's longest running assistant coach. And this morning's Columbus Dispatch, just by way of updating you, if you don't know, the Powell police chief said he was kind of fuzzy on the details of that. In fact, I thought he gave a really bad quote. He said, I'm scratching my head over this, like he didn't remember if it happened or not. Did Ohio State know about that? Did Urban Meyer know about that alleged incident?
I don't know if they did, because my understanding is with that incident is that charges, the case has not been resolved. Is the way that is what I've learned.
That is the quote from the Powell police chief. The case has not been resolved. Yes.
Okay. So in other words, if it hasn't been resolved, then whatever investigation there is ongoing. So then that information is not public. So again, if it's not public, then it wouldn't have been able to be accessed through a public records request. I was able to uncover it myself, but so then again, I'm not sure if Ohio State would have been aware of that incident either. Again, I guess Zach Smith would be able to answer that. I don't know if anyone has been able to track him down, but certainly when the allegations first surfaced, Ohio State, said this is a personnel matter and we're not going to comment.
Well, let me stop you right there. When you were talking about the allegations of 2015 when they first surfaced, Ohio State said it's a personnel matter. Are you saying when they surfaced, the details surfaced through your reporting, you reached out to Ohio State and that's the answer you got, or you've discovered that through some other media entity addressed it and you found that somewhere?
Well, actually, when he was charged cited for the trespass warning back on Wednesday, I reached out to Ohio State and they said, we're aware of the situation. We have no comment at that time. Basically, that was last Wednesday. Monday, when I reported the incident at Florida, I then reached out to Ohio State, and then I got this is a personnel matter. We're continuing to monitor. We don't speak about these things publicly. I'm paraphrasing it.
Yeah.
When that was about 8 a.m. Monday morning, about 4 or 5 p.m. Monday afternoon, I then had completed my reporting on the 2015 incident, reported that. An hour later, Ohio State put out the release that Zach Smith had been fired.
Okay, very good. Brett McMurphy's our guest. You can follow Brett on Twitter at Brett_McMurphy. And tell people now, Brett, I think it's dumb ESPN let you go. I followed you at CBS. You moved to ESPN. I thought you did a great job. Are you working independently now? You're at the Big Ten kickoff luncheon. Where else can they find your reporting other than your Twitter page?
Yeah, well, basically, all the people that got laid off, and there's a lot of us, had non-competes in our contracts. So that basically means if we can go work somewhere else, but then ESPN is not required to pay us the remainder of our contract. So my contract with ESPN expires on August 12th, and then August 13th, I'll start working at another network, which, based on my contract language, I can't
disclose
publicly.
Okay, very good. All right, great. We'll look forward to that.
My Twitter page on August 13th. I will still be covering college football on a national level. I'm very excited about it, but yeah, I don't want to take any chances of violating the contract.
Nor do I want to lead you down that road.
If you Google, it's out there. People have found out about it.
Okay, very good. Well, I personally think any entity would be lucky to have you. Brett McMurphy, our guest. Follow him on Twitter at Brett_McMurphy. Okay, do you have any insight into what changed for Ohio State, how they moved from Monday morning, it's a personnel matter, to Monday afternoon, they fired Zach Smith? Coincidence that it happened after your report of the 2015 incident alleged in Powell?
I don't, Bruce. I don't know that answer, and I'm sure Urban Meyer is going to get asked a lot of questions about Zach Smith and basically what went into the thinking of dismissing him and how that all played out. Was that simply a coincidence, or was that, basically that now they were made aware of something they weren't aware? It again, not to dismiss the seriousness of this, but maybe the thinking was in 2009 that the charges were dropped, and so they moved on, and then they weren't aware of 2015, and then that surfaced, and then that coupled with the protective order that was granted to Courtney Smith, maybe at that point it was like, we've got to move on. I honestly don't know those answers. I know the wording, excuse me, in the protective order, it's downright, it's scary if you're Courtney Smith, because it says that she is in immediate and present danger of domestic violence and for good cause. The temporary orders are necessary to protect her and her 2 children from domestic violence. So again, there's got to be a history there to be able to be granted that order. Now, keep in mind that will go before a judge on August 3rd, and the judge will determine whether to uphold that order, which means Zach Smith cannot have contact with his wife for the next 5 years, or he will dismiss it. So we'll find out on August 3rd. Individual I talked to at the Delaware County Police Department said usually, not every time, not every case is the same. Usually when those type of orders are granted, they're upheld. Because judges don't take that lightly to just grant that and just say, okay, yeah, we're going to grant that, because it's pretty serious. It's like a restraining order on steroids, if you will. So, you've asked a lot of great questions. Unfortunately, I don't have the answers to all of them, but we'll find out what Urban's willing to share here. It's certainly, changed changed the scope of these media days, where you thought they'd come in and talk about them being the favorite to win the Big Ten, to these matters, and certainly who replaces Zach Smith. Although everybody pretty well seems to think it will if everybody has the same answer on that one.
Yeah,
but,
Brian Hartline in the short term. That's what everybody expects. Brett McMurphy's our guest. His reporting, I think, it was a big chunk, if not directly led to the firing of Zach Smith as Ohio State wide receiver coach yesterday. And I've worked in this market a long time in newspapers and in radio, and I know how the fan base is. So I want to ask you, what have your mentions been like since you started reporting on this?
Actually, I mean, in Twitter, the responses they fly by so fast you can't really see them all, and I haven't broken them down. But basically, when the initial report went and I reported Monday morning, I'd say there was about I don't know, a 10 to 15%, maybe not that high, of people saying, "Why are you reporting about something that happened in 2009? Don't you have better things to do?" I would say the remaining 70 to 80% of the people were, why is Zach Smith still at Ohio State, and why does Urban Meyer have Zach Smith on his staff? Then when I reported the 2015 allegation, the percentages on the last Zach Smith Urban Meyer comments obviously shot up close to 100%. But there was such a small timetable between that and when they announced the firing, that I didn't really see a lot. But I've dealt with situations like this, and I know every fan base is loyal to their team and to their players and their coaches to a fault sometime. And anytime people contact me directly and say, "Why did you report this or that or whatever?" But first of all, I'm going to say, well, it's accurate. Secondly, I'm going to say, now imagine if what I reported was another team that you have no ties to.
Yeah.
How would you interpret the story that way? 99 out of 100 times, they're like, yeah, okay, I see it now, but I still don't like that you reported about my team. I don't personally look for, hey, I want to find something against Team X and go report it. I report the news where I find it, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's San Jose State, Texas, USC, wherever. So, but I think for the most part, as you well know how Twitter is, I'd say it was actually fairly civil.
Wow, good. I'm glad to hear that.
People get mad about, I got USC fans, hammer me every time I joke about their so-called national championship. So it doesn't take much to get people riled up. So I would say that actually the responses were fairly civil compared with a lot of other stuff that's quite frankly nonsense.
Brett McMurphy is our guest, formerly with CBS and ESPN. His new reporting home will be disclosed on his Twitter site August the 13th. Go to @Brett_McMurphy to find that out. We've had Zach Smith's attorney on twice. Predictable response from somebody who's paid to defend him. We have a relationship with Zach's family. His grandfather, Earl Bruce, was on our station for years and years and years. So that's my full disclosure. And so I'd understand why. And I've had people say, "Oh, you guys are just stumping for Zach Smith." Have you been accused of, or how would you respond? A better question. How would you respond to people who say, "Oh, well, Courtney Smith is a crazy person and she's feeding all this to you and you're an agent for her side of it"?
Well, I can either, I have no idea if Courtney Smith is a crazy person. I haven't heard that one. All I know is what I reported was initially strictly from documents that were available. The protective order that came out Friday, the trespass warning on Wednesday, the assault when she was a year pregnant, or excuse me, when they were married and she was 8 to 10 weeks pregnant. That all was public information. The 2015 information I came about was not a public record. And again, going back to how I deal with the fan bases, I'm not trying to report something for a specific side, team, or against a specific side or team. That's simply the information in the news that I was reporting. So, again, I haven't really, if there is that blowback, I certainly haven't seen it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I read every one of my Twitter mentions. But again, I'm just concerned about reporting what's accurate, and whatever direction that leads me, that's where I'm going to go.
I really appreciate you making yourself available today. I hope when you get to your new place, we can make you a semi-regular, because I'd love to just talk to you about football matters. Thanks for coming on today. I appreciate your time.
Sure, Bruce. Anytime. Thanks, buddy.